Of course, in the summertime, you have a lot of this on the surface of the water. This is duckweed and watermeal. And it's not anything you get excited about because it's good stuff. It's one of the world's smallest flowering plants, puts a lot of oxygen into the water. And there's sometimes in the summertime, if it weren't for this, some of the fish wouldn't survive. Some of those hot days like we had this past summer, because it does act like a shade, keeps the sun from penetrating, and puts the oxygen into the water the fish have to survive. But along the edge, I got to know a lot of residents there. This is one of my favorites, Redwing Blackbird. I've learned that every time it's not a very pretty call they make. It's a screeching little call, but it reminds me, anytime I hear it, I know I'm near water, and it brings back a lot of fond memories. And I watched them nest in the cattails. The only problem is they attach the nest to these cattails, and cattails don't grow at the same rate. So some grew faster than others, and they take the nest and tip it over and dump the eggs out. And so some of these pairs of red-winged blackbirds had to have 4 clutches before they were successful with the family that year. And of course, the kingfisher, that little clinking sound they make. What amazed me is they got so used to me. All these animals got so used to me, they totally ignored me. And that allowed me to just walk up to them and take pictures. I took that picture with a normal lens, just a 35 millimeter lens. That's a big northern water snake. It used to be called Natrix Cypodon. I think they changed the genus name of it. I don't know what it is now, but then it was Natrix Cypodon, and they usually run from you. You know, that's how you can tell it's a non-venomous snake, because they take off and go. Cottonmouth won't do that. Cottonmouths, they don't know fear. We don't have cottonmouths, so we don't have to worry about them. Of course, you have the pilly woodpeckers and other woodpeckers come down. They peck the holes in those old dead trees on the edge of the water. And then when they leave, a little tree swallow here, they move in and make that a home. And I was able to go around. Prothonotary warblers were nesting there, and I could just stand up in the boat and look right in that nest and watch mama feed her babies like I wasn't even there. And same way with the little tree swallows here. Then here's a little screech owl found this on the far end of the lake in that swamp forest I was telling you about. They were using it. And one day I took this picture of these little baby squirrels in there, and of course there's more of them around you need. You see this picture, I took this one day, came back 3 days later. No more squirrels, they're all gone. Black rat snakes are amazing. They can go into a burrow, take their body and push each member of the litter up against the wall and just go down the line and eat every one of them. They can clean out a nest of mice that way. They're the best mouse catchers in the world. And they're our friends. I love to have black rat snakes around because of that. Of course, wood ducks also nest in those holes. And one day, I just missed the little babies jumping out of the hole, bouncing on the ground like they do. I saw one, the last one out. I saw him. That was it. That's the first time I'd ever seen that in the wild. That's the most overdressed bird in North America right there. That's the male there. And then one day, looking at a hollow log in that swamp forest, saw this guy curled up in there. Couldn't believe he's kind of a young one. He's a little tiny thing. He's just taking an afternoon nap, staying out of the way. And of course, you saw a lot of this around the lake, and you still do, because the guy that does this work is still there. And he's funny. In the evening, he'll always swim along the dam, and then he'll swim back into his nesting place over on the other side of the lake. And I joke with some people out there, says, because he wants us to think that this is his dam. He built this. You know, showing it off. Yeah. And of course, the deer there, then this is a little young buck. And again, I took that picture with a normal lens. I just walked up to him and took his picture. Last week I was out there walking on the dam. I had to push 2 does out of the way to get by. I said, excuse me, ladies. Thank you. You know. And if you're not watching what you're doing, you can walk into them sometimes. They'll just sit right on the path and they won't move. And that's the way almost all these animals were with me, because I was there every day. They got used to me. And of course, I did nothing to harm them. Another favorite, they came back. This is one day, this is many years ago. about 10 years ago, I guess. I was down at the Big South Pond looking across at turtles and whatever, and all of a sudden, this body comes out of the water across this log, dives in, another body behind it. And this one was screaming, like, and of course I said, my word, those were otters. And I got ready and I came back up so I could really get a good look at them. Went down to the headquarters. Mike Carlton was the ranger there. John Netherton was in there. He'd been taking pictures all day. I said, I just saw 2 otters playing in the Big South Pond. They said, yeah, right. Sure you did. And then, I don't know if they were putting me on or not, but they wouldn't believe me. The next day, Nancy Amons, Channel 4, was out there in a boat doing a story about them, and these otters just put on a show for them right there in front of those TV cameras. And then later, I went out there one day, I was looking across the lake, and I saw this body, massive body, come up out of the water and go down. I said, my word, we have a Radnor Lake monster, like Loch Ness, you know. Turns out it was the otter family, and they hunt together in a little tight group. It looked like one body. It was 4 of them, two children and the original parents. And they would go down, and then about 30 yards down the way, they'd pop up again and go down. And that's the way they went all the way around the lake, feeding that way. I think they do that, teaching the young ones how to hunt. And this little guy, gray fox, he'd come down to the water's edge, and again, that was taken with a 50 millimeter lens. Just standing there. I think they realized I was standing in water, and men can't not run when they're standing in water. They knew I could not do anything to harm them, I guess. Unfortunately, the only red fox I found was this one beside the road and run over, and this is why I was so adamant about trying to close that road off. But it took about another 20 years before that happened. And of course, the mallards are out there, the waterfowl. This is one you're probably, if you go out there, you'll probably encounter this gal. She nests right there on the spillway. And whatever you do, don't pull out any snacks, because if you pull out a snack, she's going to come over and demand it. She'll take it from you. She doesn't want a handout, she wants the whole thing. She's pretty belligerent too, and they do bite. But you know, we recognized, well, before we go to that, raccoons and skunks are very bad about preying on birds' nests, but they also prey on turtles' nests. And I watch those turtles nesting, and to this day, I don't know how they do it. The females, like sliders, only have legs about that long. And yet the nest is this deep. It goes down, straight down, and it turns so it's boot-shaped. And then she dumps all these little ping-pong-like eggs in there, and they may stay there all year and hatch out the next year. It's according to when she lays them. But the problem is when she packs down the dirt to cover it up, she urinates on it to make it solid, I guess. That leaves a smell. And raccoons, and believe it or not, skunks have a very good sense of smell. It's hard to believe, but they do. And skunks love turtle eggs. And so I estimated that 90% of all the nests that I marked with a little flag were preyed upon. They were dug up, and you see the shells all around the nest because of these predators. But yet, they still make it. And the little guys, when they come out, they're so tiny that a bass can come along and swallow it whole. So they've got a long way to go, but yet the turtle populations out there remain pretty strong. And this, if you go out there in the evening, you are almost guaranteed to hear this guy, barred owl. And one day I was doing that. I like to call them in because they'll come to you. If you get a group of them, they sound like monkeys in a tree. They make other sounds like, ha, 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 ha. And so I was trying to do that, and I kept hearing one, and kept getting closer. And finally, I topped the hill. It was John Netherton. He thought I was barred out. I thought he was barred out. And we just sat there, pointing at each other, laughing at each other. I tell you, John Netherton, he was like a brother. And losing him was tremendously hard. I guess another benefit was just being out there all the time, watching the seasonal changes. Fall came, and I still had traps. I didn't have traps in the water when it was like this. What is so funny about this scene, there's a signs everywhere, do not walk in on the ice. Look at the tracks. And I have a confession, one of those sets of tracks was mine. I said, well, they can do it, I guess I can too. Famous last words. And then, of course, great sunrises. When I was out there watching the nesting turtles, that's when they were more apt to come up and nest. And sometimes I was there at night hearing the frogs calling and treated to a beautiful sunset. Of course, things have changed. There's a spillway as it is now. Recently, the Friends of Radnor Lake, and I was on their board for about 12 years out there, and there's some great people on that board. They are movers and shakers, I'll tell you. They get the job done. They have added unbelievable amounts of land. We started out 770 acres. I think right now we're at 1,175. And we got another 43 acres to be added. It's on the top of the ridge. If you're on Franklin Road, there's a Korean church, and it's right up above that Korean church. On the 43 acres of old growth forest going to be added to Radnor Lake. There's another one they're been looking at for 10 years now. It's got a very big price tag on it. But if we get it, it will join Radnor Lake property with Old Hickory Boulevard over, in Brentwood. And a lot of those bicyclists can use that, dog walkers, and that'll take some of the pressure off the lake itself sometime. They also recognize the people that have made a difference. That's Dr. Dunn, Winfield Dunn. Without him, Savage Gulf, Radnor Lake would have never been saved. He's a person, I don't even remember what party he was in. I think he was a Republican, wasn't he? Is that right? But you couldn't tell because he didn't do anything along party lines. He was a man that wanted to do the right thing. He did. And we always give a conservation award. And this one he's holding right there is a stained glass picture of Radnor Lake. And then there's another person there I'm glad they honored too. Later on, he got the same award, Senator Doug Henry. He's been an ally from the very beginning. Everything we tried to do, he was there to help. He even chaired the fundraising committee that raised the public funds to go with the federal funds and state funds to save it. And that's one of my former students, Chip Throckmorton. You saw him a while ago as a kid standing next to the trap. He helped us too tremendously. He gave us a lot of money in the city of Oak Hill to save an area up on the hilltops in the far end of the lake. The reason is because he didn't want that property be developed and have those houses slide off the hill, which they would have because it's Chattanooga shale. That stuff is highly unstable. It's full of radon too, and he didn't want them suing the city of Oak Hill because of that. And so it's a nice addition to Radnor Lake. I was proud of him. I told him that. And there's another also received the award later on. That's Mac Pritchard. He's the only man I know alive that has more slides than I do. And I know I have at least, last count, I kind of estimate around 8,500 slides. He's got, his must number in 100,000 range. He's always taking pictures. He's been everywhere. He's got a picture of everything inside. There's something else about Radnor Lake that's really special. I want to show you this first. This is the real John Netherton. I don't know if you can see that. We were at Ocean Springs, Mississippi, taking the marine biology course, and he took this Spanish moss and put it around him and put it around his head, pulled his hair up in a little bun. He's got a big scraggly beard that matched the moss. And he comes up out of the marsh one day and everybody's outside. And I said, "What is that?" And everybody looked over there and they realized who it was. Everybody's just rolling on the floor laughing. That's the kind of person he was. And there's another picture of him. I was in this one. This was at Jungle Brook Nature Trail in Smokies, a little cabin there, and there he is. And the fellow standing there is John Jager, our exhibits chief that made our logo. And that's me over there. All I needed was a banjo. And that would look like something out of Deliverance. But he could have made a living as a professional comedian. He's one of the, John Netherton was around, everybody's laughing. And you couldn't help yourself. you'd laugh in spite of yourself. But he could be a fighter too. He really felt this heartfelt, almost spiritual connection with Radnor Lake. And I'm finding more and more and more people doing that. I'm out there a lot. I see people that are dealing with issues in their lives that I would not want to have to deal with. Some of them have cancer. Some of them have lost a loved one. Some of them are dealing with divorce. And they go to Radnor for solace in a natural setting. That became obvious back in the summer when there was a threat of a cell phone tower being put above the lake. Thousands of emails poured into that cell phone company. If you ever do this, you won't ever sell another cell phone as long as you're in business. And so they didn't do it. But one day, Channel 4 was out there. This Catholic priest who walks there a lot was coming across the dam. They said, "Father, you think they'll build that cell phone out up there?" And he thought he was going to give them some words of wisdom. He said, "Over my dead body." As he said, "I have a church, and that's where people come for Mass, and they come for sacraments, but this is where I go to talk to God." And there's a lot of people that can really identify with that. And I'm one of them. When I was there doing the turtle study, some days I'd come in, and especially on Fridays, I didn't have school, and I had this annotated edition of Walden. And I sit there on the bank looking over Radnor Lake to read this. Boy, what a great place to read it. And I finally finished it. And one day I was out there and John Netherton comes up, all his cameras hanging off of him. And I said, "John, I want to show you this map of Walden Pond that's in this book." That's Walden Pond that Henry David Thoreau lived on. And I've been there, and I'll tell you right away, I was so disappointed in that place. Radnor Lake is 100 times more beautiful. It is. We got something here that Walden Pond could never match. But I said, "This is Nashville's Walden." And he said, "Hey, why don't you write an article about it? We'll put in the paper and I'll supply the photographs." I said, "John, I'm doing this turtle study. I'm in graduate school. I don't have time to even sleep. I can't take time out to write anything. I'm not a good writer anyway." Well, later on he got with a guy named John Egerton, and they wrote a little book called Radnor Lake, Nashville's Walden, and that was his first book he published. From that point on, at his death, he had published 27 books and working on another one. But I thought that was really cool. And of course, reading Thoreau and being there on the site was really a spiritual experience. Thank you.